Thank you for coming this afternoon, and I'm going to give a more formal talk on my pathway to painting, which is just one of those things that relates to the end product. So the work itself relates to that. The paintings and the poetry are interlinked because I've been painting and writing poetry all my life, with a gap in the painting of about 38 years when I had a family. So most of the big works here were done since I retired from paid work. So that's been sort of 13 years of incredible hard work. I've done a catalogue which is called Stardust Painter-Poet, and it's out there on the table, and you can have a look at that later. And in that catalogue I've done an essay on poetry and art, and looking at the links between those two art forms. I'm not saying it's a definitive work, but it's my take on it, and it's coming from the point of view of an evolutionary biologist, because I was looking at what I call the selection pressures and comparing it, you know, to the funny things that happen in the animal kingdom. I am personally delighted to be having this exhibition, and I thank the Royal Art Society for hosting it, and it's been a very exciting couple of days and a very exhausting couple of days. We had a great party on Friday night, and John McDonnell launched it, which was wonderful for me, and he said nice words, amongst which he said that I was a better poet than the painter. Now, you're not allowed to laugh yet, I haven't finished the joke. He said I was a better poet than the painter Turner. And, yeah, and everyone laughed, you know, because he'd just said before that Turner wrote a lot of very ordinary poems. But apparently the man churned out a lot of poems. Now, he didn't say the reverse. I noticed that got a couple of people here from the poetry background, John Carey and Danny Gardner, so welcome you guys. I was going to tell my poetry joke that when I was a young man I joined the Poets Union, and there were a few hotheads at the time that agitated we go on strike, and they did, and no one noticed. But that's not strictly true, because there were people from the Musicians Union that were striking and they didn't get a pay rise over that. So, you know, it's not absolutely true. But what I was trying to say was that sometimes art can be very ephemeral and not have much impact on the greater society. And in more recent times, I think I've been having more luck with my paintings than my poetry, because paintings are things that you can take in one go. They're highly visual. Whereas a poem you have to read it, or a book you have to read it and digest it, and sometimes read it again to get the full meaning of that. I know that I'll have a reaction when this is over. I'll have withdrawal symptoms, so I've got to start planning what I'm going to do next. So that's part of my life cycle, that I go from one project to the next. And I do have withdrawal symptoms when it finishes, but I always plan the next one, which means I've got something to get on with. I think I have a mind that is intuitive and logical, which is a rare combination because I'm in the sciences and in the arts. And the science part of my brain is highly logical, whereas the intuitive side is the artistic side. So I'm lucky. I mean, there are people that have both, but some people are more heavily skewed to one side or the other. The other thing about being an artist is you have to have sensitivity. But being sensitive in life can be painful, because you get rubbed up against, you know, awkward situations, and you have to become tough. And you have to develop a mental toughness to survive criticism and bad reviews and sometimes nastiness of the, you know, the artistic world. So I think I've had a lot of knockbacks in my life, but I've just kept on going. So I've been persistent and dogged. And so I'm just sort of coming out of a period where I've had knockbacks, but then I get a yes, and this is wonderful. So it's pluses and minuses, and at the moment there's more pluses than minuses, which is wonderful. But then you're only as good as your last show, so the caravan moves on, and you know, so you get on with something else. I saw another joke, it's sort of a visual joke. I like humour because I think humour stops me becoming melancholy. I like to laugh at things, you know, rather than feel down about things. And it was a young boy who is saying, I'm going to be an artist when I grow up. And that could have been me. And then there's a young man saying, I'm going to be an artist, you know, when I get settled and sorted out. Then the next caption says, I'm going to be an artist, you know, when the kids grow up and when I pay the mortgage. And the next one says, I'm going to be an artist when I retire. And the next one says, I'm going to be an artist when I get off life support. And it's not funny, but it's quite serious. And so I've become an artist between retirement and life support, and I'm quite pleased with that. And I think that with painting, it's something that you can keep on into extreme old age as long as you've got some degree of your marbles and some degree of vision. And even if you lose your vision, you can still paint. You go into the more Turneresque style, the more muted, vague shapes. You can do abstract instead of, you know, detail. There are many potential painters and poets who die young, but they don't die into the grave as such, but they die into librarians or teachers or parents or lawyers or whatever. And this is just a fact of life, that the commercial grind and the sheer horror of having to earn a buck is a big distraction. And most of us get distracted. And I did, as I say, for my middle life. But I always had that burning wish to be a painter. And I've only just sort of done it more recently. And I said, there's a couple of volunteer guides here from the garden. I said to them, it's a bloody sight harder to become a member of the Royal Art Society than it is to become a volunteer guide. I had to put in more hours, I can assure you. So this business of it being tough is just a reality, and there are a number of artists in this room that I know, and you would appreciate that. That being so, it is important to be a survivor, because it's only the survivors who, by definition, live long enough to write the books or paint the pictures. So it's very important to hang on in there and survive. It is true that success can be offensive. It can be quite offensive to some people. So you've got to play a very delicate political game in life, of dodging bullets. And I think that one of the tricks is not to expect too much. So I've had low expectations, and that's been good, I think. And my greatest thanks is that I still have a strong impulse to paint. Although I've lost my poetic impulse, I'm sorry boys, over the last few years, I just haven't got the same lyric capacity. I think that one of the greatest impulses for art, from my perspective, is mortality. And that is reflecting on the fact that we don't live on this earth for very long, and some of us choose to want to do something in a certain veil, a certain style, a certain thing. And that's one of the reasons why we do it. And the counterpoint to death is sex, because sex is the progeneration urge that creates the new species, the new generation, the new cycle. And those things are highly linked. And in art, there is a degree of courtship ritual. And that is very evident in the animal kingdom. And in the arts, it may not be literal courtship, but you are courting territorial respect. So this courtship ritual is a seeking of territorial respect. In the animal kingdom, the courtship ritual is expressed in the song of the whale, the bow of the bowerbird, the plumage of the birds of paradise, and the peacock's tail. And these are all excessive things, usually developed by males, which is one of those things that is a biological fact that is to do with attracting the opposite sex for procreation. So that's the biology side of it. I think in art you need some talent, but you need more than talent. You need a technique and you need a tenacity. So I have read that to learn a hand-eye coordination takes about 10,000 hours. So to learn the piano, you've got to sit there for 10,000 hours. So when I retired, I worked for 6 years day and night, and I got my 10,000 hours up. So I'm just starting to get the technical proficiency. And I'm sorry I didn't have this when I was 20, you know. It would have been great. And been well off and been able to, you know, do it exclusively to the exclusion of everything else. So the perspiration factor is important in this. And Thomas Edison had said that inspiration is 99% perspiration, and that is very true. And there's a lot of ducking and diving and movement along that path. The other thing is luck. There's a lot of luck in life. And if you get a good opportunity, you've got to be prepared to take it at that time. And that's very much part of this art game. The other thing is you need self-belief. Because if you didn't have self-belief, you'd never start. But that, paradoxically, comes up against an anomaly. And that is that one of the great impulses for art is also insecurity. Because you've got this tension, self-belief, insecurity. Because if you're a practicing artist or a writer and you're doing something and you think, oh my God, and you look at the works of the past, and if you are comparing yourself with great works of the past, then you will get depressed. It's an obvious sort of equation. So in the process of doing, you must suffer self-doubt. And I think the answer is to basically say, well, look, I'm not Shakespeare, I'm not Keats, I'm not Titian, or I'm not Rembrandt, but I'm doing my own synthesis. So you put together your own synthesis of your life's experience and your cosmologies. So all art is concerned with life, death, sex, birth, religion, the universe, all that sort of stuff. It's everything. And an artist has got to be interested in all these things and trying to put together your synthesis of it. So in that sense, this exhibition is my vast self-portrait. And that's not an original thing, that's the word that was used by John MacDonald on Friday night. And it is a synthesis of my writing and my experience. And there is no doubt in my writing I have been, I've been harvesting and mining my life. And all writers do that. Henry Lawson was great at it, you know. Others are less great at it, but you are mining your life and trying to synthesise it. I grew up in a farming community, which was then very isolated. And I had very little contact with other children until I went to school. So I grew up talking like an adult and thinking like an adult. It was quite strange, really. And then I went to school and there were all these little people running around. And it was very strange. My ancestors had been essentially adventurers, emancipists, and subsistence farming fishermen and sailors. My great-grandfather had been a Danish sailor on a whaling ship who jumped the ship in Sydney to go to the gold rushes. And on my mother's side, I'm related to Peter Hibbs, who came out on the Sirius, and we were talking about that earlier. And Peter Hibbs was on the flagship of the First Fleet, and he was a free man, which made him rather unusual in that time. And he got some land grants and then went broke because the floods came, you know. But he married a convict girl on Norfolk Island and had a tribe of kids, and they married into the emancipist families of the lower Hawkesbury. So I'm related now to half the Hawkesbury River. And I didn't know that when I was little. My father's rank or occupation on his death certificate was tractor driver. So that's not an auspicious start to life. He was in fact a farmer who was working on the airport at Evans Head during the war. He'd been in a love triangle with two women and had fathered an illegitimate boy, my brother, then married my brother and then killed himself. So this was not auspicious, and something I never talked about until I was 61. I'd heard the aunties talking, and all this was denied. But when I was 61, my half-brother found me, and we had a great time solving the mysteries of our Gothic childhoods. and I love that man, and we had a wonderful relationship for 5 years. And he died in 2008. Now it gets more complicated because he had been christened, our father's name was Edwin James. My brother had been christened Edwin James, and I had been christened Edwin James. Very complicated. So my brother was called Jim, and I was called Peter. And I spent half my childhood thinking I was Peter. My mother remarried when I was 5, and that's when we went to Brunswick. And she married a man called Henry Forbes, who was a cabinet maker. And most people then called me Peter Forbes, which was just natural to them.